Each and every year, I think back on how Halloween was completely different when I grew up. Over the years, there have been quite a few changes, but I remember a more festive and fun time. My childhood memories during this season are something that I will always cherish. The month of October really wasn't that exciting except for the fact that I knew Halloween was coming at the end of the month. That was something I looked forward to each and every year. But as far as the rest of the month, I would watch a few scary movies on television and go to a haunted house. It was really fun to be scared, and it also added to the excitement that built up to Halloween night. In the 70s, Halloween decorations were pretty simple. Most were made of paper or cardboard and then taped to windows and doors. The jack-o'-lantern was always the most fun decoration to do. A day or two before Halloween, kids would use real knives to carve a pumpkin and then use a spoon to scoop out the seeds. There were no pumpkin master carving kits like today. The pumpkin seeds would then be salted and roasted in the oven for a once-a-year snack. The 1970s also saw a huge assortment of costumes to choose from at the local department stores such as Kmart. Most all of these were little packages that had a themed mask and a matching costume made of plastic. The masks themselves had an elastic band that held them very snug on your face, and they had a distinctive plastic odor. This mask was so tight that the eye holes would almost cut into your face. When your mom asked if you could see or breathe through it, you had to lie and say yes. You certainly didn't want mom to start cutting on the mask and ruining it by making the eye holes and nose area bigger. If she did that, she would ruin the mask and everyone would make fun of you. And even worse than that, you certainly didn't want her telling you that you couldn't go trick-or-treating because you couldn't breathe or see through it. She was already paranoid by news stories claiming that not being able to see out the mask was super dangerous. She also learned from that news report that the costume needed to be flame retardant because some stupid kid apparently stood too close to a lit jack-o'-lantern. Those masks and costumes were really cheaply made, and the majority of the time they never lasted much longer than Halloween. But not every kid had one of those. Some kids tried their hand at makeup, while others had moms that would make costumes for their kids. Those were certainly better quality, but they were never the cool superheroes or television stars that most kids wanted. If you waited until the last minute and Kmart didn't have any of those costumes, then there was the old trusty white sheet that mom would dig out and allow you to use. A couple snips for the eye holes and it was ready to throw over your head and go out the door. Schools also got in on the Halloween fun. Usually there was a board in the classroom where the teacher would decorate it with witches, black cats, ghosts, and goblins. There were also activities and assignments that had something to do with Halloween, but the best part was when they allowed everyone to wear their costume to school. They may have had a costume parade or they may have had a Halloween party in the classroom. It was a special time when you can enjoy a tasty treat and then get super excited about going trick-or-treating later on. When school let you out, you rushed home, still filled with lots of excitement. It seemed like the evening's festivities couldn't get started quick enough. It was during this time that Mom would put TV dinners in the oven because she felt you had to eat something healthy in order to have energy for that night. Back in those days, TV dinners took forever to bake in the oven. So in the meantime, you played outside in your costume, getting sweaty with all the other neighborhood kids. When the TV dinner was ready, Mom called you inside to eat. Hopefully she remembered to pull back one corner of the aluminum foil on top so you didn't have a frozen popsicle gravy. No matter what it was, you really didn't want it, and it seemed to take forever to eat it. There was a good chance that some of this dinner would be tossed under the table for the dog to eat when Mom wasn't looking. After all, he needed a treat for the night too. Every great trick-or-treater needed something to collect all those tasty treats in. Plastic pumpkins were always highly coveted, but many kids chose to use pillowcases because they held so much more. Of course, there was always the trusty paper grocery sack to use as well. You had one mission as a kid, and that was to not come home until whatever you had was full. Back then, it wasn't uncommon to receive full-size candy bars from certain houses. Those that did have those were people that kids considered to be rich. Somehow you were going to figure out a way to hit that house again. In that day and time, there weren't really any hours for trick-or-treating. Once the sun went down, it was off you went with your friends. Of course, if you were really little, then a parent went with you while the other one stayed home to pass out candy. Kids were everywhere on the streets, sidewalks, and front porches. There was always a lot of screams and laughter that could be heard throughout the night. Practically every house passed out treats, and the night wasn't over until the porch lights of every house were off. That was the official end time for trick-or-treating. When that happened, every kid rushed home and dumped out all their candy on the living room floor. That noise would wake Mom up from her short nap in the chair with a cigarette still burning in the ashtray. She would immediately swoop down and take the apple away because she saw some news report on the television where people were hiding razor blades inside them. Of course, you're okay with that because you didn't want an apple anyway. But the Pop Rocks? Yes, she says, because they will make your stomach explode if you mix them with Coca-Cola. Apparently that was on the news as well. The rest of the candy was looked over to make sure it wasn't tampered with. Little did she know that you had eaten several pieces in the dark while running around with your friends. Now it was time to sort through your candy and figure out what you want while watching old black and white horror films that aired on television. This was one of the few nights that kids were allowed to stay up late and watch scary movies while eating tons of candy until you got a stomachache. Kids that were in middle school did not go trick-or-treating. They went to Halloween parties which consisted of treats and scary movies. However, these same kids would also roam the streets and take away candy from younger kids. Later that night, they would act out in mischievous ways by egging houses or toilet papering them. Your parents were always hoping and praying that their house didn't get hit because cleaning up after either one was never easy. Adults certainly had their own kind of fun during the Halloween season. There were tons of costume and cocktail parties where they got a little crazy. But they sure had some creative costumes, and now when you look back on those photos, they are quite funny to see. Store-bought costumes were never really a preferred way for most adults. That was how Halloween used to be. Today, kids can rarely wear costumes to school. And speaking of costumes, they really have gotten incredibly expensive. Most costumes are store-bought, and moms rarely make costumes for their kids anymore. If they do, then it's probably something made out of non-allergenic material so it can go along with their healthy organic snack options. And of course, after the kid gets in the costumes, you have to go outside and do different poses so she can have 17 different photos to post on Instagram. The really sad thing about Halloween is that less than half of the homes even pass out candy. Another change in most neighborhoods are the hours of when you can go trick-or-treating. Most seem to be 6 or 6:30 to 8 p.m. The fear of having tampered candy has scared most parents away from allowing their kids to participate in door-to-door activities. Trick-or-treating has also dwindled away thanks to alternatives such as fall festivals at churches and trunk-or-treating. While these can certainly be great for kids, it pales in comparison to kids having fun in the neighborhood. Halloween as a kid was always an exciting time. If you can remember what it was like, then I would love for you to share your memories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and happy Halloween!